and thank you for joining me today for another paddleboard video. In my last video we made our way down the River Severn from Atcham in Shropshire down to Ironbridge. So in this one we're going to continue that journey. We're going to go from Ironbridge down to Bridgnorth. Our start point is at the Museum of the Gorge in Ironbridge. Next to this you'll find two pay and display car parks, one right next to the museum and then one a little further along called Dale End Car Park. You can see here next to the museum is this lovely little beach that you're able to launch from. Going to be finishing the journey at Severn Park, just on the edge of Bridgnorth. The whole journey from Ironbridge to Bridgnorth is going to be about 9 miles or 14 kilometres. The eagle-eyed of you may have noticed that I'm pumping up the paddleboard here, not at Ironbridge, but further up the river at Bridgnorth, where I started my journey. But as I've already done a video from Atcham down to Ironbridge and covered Bridgnorth, we're going to start this video at Ironbridge. And as I said in the last video, if you're paddling on a river, I would always advise using a quick release leash and some form of buoyancy aid. Those are probably particularly important today. As you can see by this footage, the river was extremely high when I filmed this video and extremely fast flowing. This was filmed a couple of weeks before my previous video down from Atcham to Bridgnorth, when the river was probably about a metre or so higher than it was in that video. So let's get going down the river. We make our way through Ironbridge town. On the left you can see there's quite a few shops and pubs. If you do make this trip on a weekend, especially if the sun's out, I do expect this area to be very busy. You will have an audience, especially if you're standing up on your board. People love to see that as you make your way down the river. And this is what people come to Ironbridge for. The famous Ironbridge itself, centre of the UNESCO World Heritage Site here in Ironbridge. It was in this area that Abraham Darby perfected the technique of smelting iron with coke, allowing much cheaper production of iron and in much greater quantities. And because of this, his grandson Abraham Darby III was able to build this bridge out of iron, the first iron bridge in the world. Construction on the bridge began in 1779 and the bridge opened on New Year's Day 1781. It has been crossed by many people in its time, most notably the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh in July 2003. I love paddling this section of the river. I think you get a view of this beautiful bridge that many people do not get to enjoy. It's also much quieter on the river than it is up on top of the bridge. A little further down the river you might get a peek of the Bedlam furnaces. These were built in 1756 by the Madeley Wood Company as a blast furnace. And when you see these furnaces, I'd advise that you get over to the left side of the river. The water is very high today, so what we can't see is that usually in the middle of the river here there is actually an island, and the water on the right side of the river is generally quite shallow, so it's always better to go to the left here. And with the water being quite fast moving here, I've actually dropped to my knees just for a bit more stability. It's here that you'll start to see the next bridge that we're going to pass under, and that is the Jackfield Free Bridge. It was named the Free Bridge as the original bridge built here in 1909 was toll-free, unlike the Iron Bridge about a kilometre upstream from here. The bridge built in 1909 was replaced in 1994 with this bridge that we see here today. This is a cable stay type bridge and it looks very modern considering the surroundings here in Ironbridge Gorge. It's just after the Jackfield Bridge that we'll approach the Jackfield Rapids. You'll hear these before you see them, and they are classed as a 2/3 rating rapid, so it's up to you whether you want to run them or not. I'm not a massively experienced paddleboarder, and as the river is quite high today and quite fast flowing, I'm going to avoid them. So the way to do that is basically to get out of the river on the left side, and there is a path that allows you to walk past the rapids, and then there's a little beach just after the rapids where you can get back in again. So as you can see, the path is quite well trodden, even now at the end of summer. It's not overgrown. As you make your way past the rapids, you do get quite a good view up here of what you are avoiding. As you can see, there is a lot of water flowing through there today. so I think I've definitely made the right decision avoiding these. If you do decide to tackle the rapids, this is what they look like at a more normal water level. You can see there's a lot of rocks on the left. I think they've been put there on purpose to make the rapids a little rougher and make them a little more interesting. So do avoid the left side and keep to the middle of those sort of V's that you can see the water making, and you'll be fine. I've actually managed to dig out some very old footage of me in my inflatable kayak going down these rapids. Tackling them in an inflatable is particularly easy. Inflatables are obviously very buoyant due to the large amount of air in them, so they just bounce right over the rapids. Really, really good fun if you do get the chance to do it. Back to today, and as you follow the path you'll come to these steps, which would usually lead down onto a dry beach, but as the water is so high today, we are walking down these steps into the water, but this is where you get back onto the river. From here down to the Coalport bridge, there are a few sections of the river where it can be a little bit bumpy, especially today as there's quite a lot of water in it. So just something to bear in mind, and if like me you're not completely comfortable standing up through rougher waters, just stay down on your knees and you'll be fine. A little further downstream we come to the Half Moon Inn. This is a lovely little pub right on the banks of the River Severn. One of my favourite places actually in Ironbridge Gorge to have a drink on a summer's day. Lots of outside space. As far as I'm aware, the management of the pub are more than happy for people to use it to start and finish their paddles, as long as you are obviously buying a drink or getting some food, which I would recommend at this place. There is a little slipway there that will allow you to get in and out of the water. Not far downstream from the Half Moon Inn, we come to our next bridge, the Jackfield and Coalport Memorial Bridge. This was built in 1922 and was built there to replace a ferry service that took people from their homes on the left side of the river to Coalport on the right side of the river, where there were many factories at the time. On the right side of the bridge here you'll find the boat inn. There is access out the river here, although it is up quite a steep bank. Just as you pass under the bridge, you'll see the bank where you're able to get out. You can see there is a fence, but there is a gate to allow you access on and off the river here. And again, my understanding is that if you are using the pub for drinks or food, they're happy for you to access the river here. You'll also find access to the river at the Coalport China Museum, just below the bridge. This is on the left side. There are some spots to get out. It is a little bit muddy, but there is access here. Just watch out for fishermen as well. There is a car park there at the China Museum. It is a paid for one, but that's a possible access point if you need it there. There's one final bridge in Ironbridge Gorge that we need to pass under before leaving this beautiful area. As we bounce down this slightly rough section of river, on the left here is the last place you'll be able to get out before we leave the gorge. It looks a little bit steep, and it is, but it is possible to get out there. I have done it when I've needed to. The bridge that we see here today at Coalport was built in 1818 out of cast iron. There was a bridge here before this in different forms, and the name of the pub just past the bridge gives us an idea of what the other bridge was like. The name of the pub as we pass under the bridge is the Woodbridge Inn, and the management of this pub are 100% not keen on people accessing the river from their land, and I can tell you that from personal experience. So do not use this pub to access the river, even if you are having a drink or a meal. So that's it, we've pretty much paddled the length of Ironbridge Gorge, and from here on the next stop where you can get picked up by car is Bridgnorth. So onwards. From the Museum of the Gorge to Coalport Bridge is about 2.5 miles or 4 kilometres. Of a total length of this journey about 9 miles or 14 kilometres, so we've still got a fair way to go. But in this journey there's actually only 2 more bridges that we're going to pass under, and the first of these is actually only a bridge for a couple of sewage pipes, This bridge here that you can see takes sewage pipes over to the Coalport sewage treatment works run by Severn Trent. So if you do smell something a bit dodgy around here, that's why. Once we pass this sewage treatment works, we have another 7 miles or 11 kilometres to go to Bridgnorth, with only one more bridge that we're going to pass under at Apley, and that's only a footbridge. So this section of river, after we've passed through Ironbridge Gorge, is a lot quieter than the section that flows past Ironbridge town and down to Coalport. There are spots where you could get in and off the river if you needed to in emergency, but there is no road access to anywhere down here. The only access is down a right-of-way for cyclists and walkers, which follows the route of the old Severn Valley Railway. I have done a video on that cycle route, so if you'd like to know a little bit more about it, I'll leave a link to that video in the description of this one. The river between Coalport and Bridgnorth is generally pretty placid. The water is flat, and the river is generally slower flowing. However, today, with such high water levels, there were a few sections where the water got a little bit bumpy and the flow got pretty quick. So always good to be on your toes and look out for these things. You can see here on the left there's somewhat of an island that's formed. I don't think that's usually there. I think that's only because the water level is so high. And so all this water is getting funneled through this tighter channel. So it'd get a bit faster here, and there was a few sections like this just to be aware of when the water is higher. But again, if you're not confident standing up, do what I do and just go on your knees, you'll be perfectly fine. Even with the water level being so high, there were still plenty of places on the river I was able to stand up on the board and enjoy paddleboarding as it was intended. As I made my way to the next bridge on this journey, which is the Apley Suspension Bridge. This is about 4 miles or 7.5 kilometres from Bridgnorth. This bridge was put in to provide access from Apley Hall on the left side of the river to Linley Holt on the Severn Valley Railway on the right side of the river. Apley Hall is the centre of the Apley estate, which owns a lot of land in this area, including the land that the Severn Valley Railway ran through. One of the conditions of the railway being built was that a train station was built here at Linley to provide access to Apley Hall. Access was originally by ferry, but in 1905 this suspension bridge was built to provide easier access to the station, which closed in 1963. I'm starting to get a little bit hungry now, and I think I've found a nice place to stop for some lunch. A nice gravel bank here by the side of this pretty peaceful section of river. If you are looking for somewhere to stop, just be careful. There are a few places where you'll see signs put up by the Apley estate that say that the land is private and they do not want you to stop there. But I see no such signs here, so I'm going to pull over and have something to eat. This was a nice spot, but to be honest I could have done with a chair or something to sit on. But apart from that, lovely place to stop and have something to eat. Just a little further downstream from the Apley Suspension Bridge. With nowhere to actually sit down, I made that quite a quick stop and hopped back on the board to carry on the rest of the journey down to Bridgnorth. It was at this point I hit probably one of the roughest section of water between Coalport and Bridgnorth. You can see the waves here are fairly high. I'm not sure the camera quite does it justice. I mean, it was definitely not white water, but definitely something to look out for, definitely very bumpy. However, again, despite a few spots where the water was a bit rougher, this section of the river is generally very placid. It's also extremely quiet, with no roads nearby. One of my favourite sections of river. I'm now 4 kilometres or so from Bridgnorth, and this section is absolutely lovely. The river is fairly slow flowing here, but enough where you don't really need to paddle too hard to make good progress. And it's just really, really quiet, apart from the sounds of the river. Absolutely beautiful. I am really enjoying this section. As we close in on Bridgnorth, you'll notice some sandstone cliffs to the left of the river. There's a lot of sandstone in the area around Bridgnorth, and Bridgnorth High Town itself is built on a large sandstone cliff. You'll see at the base of this cliff in Bridgnorth itself lots of tunnels that go into the cliff that were apparently used during the Civil War. Caves were also dug out in the area for people to live in. You can see a couple here on the bank of the river, and there's also a few houses in Bridgnorth itself that have basements dug out of this sandstone that are used today for living space. I'm on the final stretch to Bridgnorth here. I think there's about 2k to go. Come into a bit of a headwind, so I've come down on my knees just to get out the wind a little bit. But I've got plenty of time to get to the rowing club in Bridgnorth, where I'm getting out to meet my lift at 2. So all is well. About half a mile from Bridgnorth, and the last landmark that we pass along this journey is Pendlestone Fort. This was built by an eccentric mill owner in the 19th century and was used for a variety of purposes over its lifetime, including a corn mill, a forge and a textile mill, until it fell into disrepair. It was refurbished around 2012 and is now luxury apartments on the bank of the River Severn. After battling the wind, we're now coming into Bridgnorth, and we start to see civilization around the banks of the river again, something that's been very sparse since we left Coalport. You can see in front of us High Town of Bridgnorth, which is where the centre is, on top of that sandstone cliff. Severn Park is to the left of us here, and this is where we're going to get out. You can see just in front of me there is a slipway where we're able to access the river from. There is a large pay and display car park here that we're able to use, and a park for kids as well as a large grass area for putting your board down in. So it's a great place to access the river to and from. A little further down from here as well, there's also Bridgnorth Rowing Club, where there are steps to access the river if you might find that a little bit easier. With the river generally being quite placid here, this is also a good spot that you can paddle upstream from and come back down to save you having to get picked up at either end of a one-way journey down the river. And that's it, we've come to the end of this journey from Ironbridge to Bridgnorth on the River Severn, and what a great journey it's been. This really is a beautiful section of river and really very quiet in places, a great place to get away from the usual hustle and bustle of life. I've really enjoyed it. This spot at Severn Park is great with all this grass to be able to get your board down and packed away. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. It really does keep it flowing. If you've got any questions, please do drop me a comment. Thank you very much for watching, and happy paddling.